Bandeham Shiguro Shiyata Parakamlam Shigurun Vaishnavam Scha Shirupam Sagrajatam Sagararaganatam Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shirara Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Scha Om Jnana Timarandasha Gyanachana Shlakaya Chakshuramaitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Sapurakam Gurganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shirupa Patanugam Govinda Bidamujwalam Bharatanam Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Vidya Pradam Devam Divyatanam Suchandavananam Balarka Chelan Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shubhanam Madhika Sharanam Nyasishwara Shridharam Manchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gora Tabishe Namah. So we're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad. So we're in the Adi-lila chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features with the Pancha-tattva. Okay. This is text number 119. Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta Kshetra Gyakya Tatapara Avidya Karma Samgyaya Tritiya Shaktir Ishyate. The potency of Lord Vishnu is summarized in 3 categories, namely the spiritual potency, the living entities, and ignorance. The spiritual potency is full of knowledge. The living entities, although belonging to the spiritual potency, are subject to bewilderment, and the third energy, which is full of ignorance, is always visible in fruitive activities. So this is from the Vishnu Purana. It's talking about the Antaranga Shakti, spiritual potency, the Tatastha Shakti, the living entities who are the jivas, who are in the marginal potency, and then there is the avidya. The avidya is the maya potency, ignorance. So, let's see. This is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana. In the previous verse, what I wanted to say is that Mahaprabhu is talking with Prakashananda Saraswati and the mayavadi sannyasis, and he's explaining to them really what the Brahma Sutra, what the Vedas are really about. They're not about impersonalism, and they're not. We don't follow the Sharirak Bhasha of Shankaracharya. And so Mahaprabhu, these mayavadi sannyasis, they believe that the devotees are all sentimentalist and ignorant, and they don't really know what is spiritual life, and they're all just engaged in Maya. So Mahaprabhu is giving them the real purport of the Vedic literature, he says. So this is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana. In the previous verse, quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, it has been established that the living entities are to be categorized among the Lord's potencies. The Lord is potent, and there are varieties of potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vividai Vashruyate. Now, in this quotation from the Vishnu Purana, this is further confirmed. There are varieties of potencies, and they have been divided into 3 categories, namely spiritual, marginal, and external. The spiritual potency is manifested in the spiritual world. Krishna's form, qualities, activities, and entourage are all spiritual. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Ajopi-san, Avyayatma, Bhutanam, Ishvaropi-san, Prakritim Swam, Adhishtaya, Sambhavami, Atmamayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my spiritual potency, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Atma Maya refers to the spiritual potency. When Krishna comes to this or any other universe, he does so with his spiritual potency. We take birth by the force of the material potency, but as stated here with reference to the Vishnu Purana, the Kshetragya, or living entity, belongs to the spiritual potency. Thus, when we free ourselves from the clutches of the material potency, we can also enter the spiritual world. Yes, so the living entities are they're paraprakriti. They're not. Matter is aparaprakriti. Matter is aparaprakriti. That is. Actually, there is consciousness everywhere, but the living entities, they are conscious. They're different than matter. So, but they identify with material potency. The material potency is the energy of darkness or complete ignorance of spiritual activities. In the material potency, the living entity engages himself in fruitive activities, thinking that it can be happy through expansion in terms of material energy. This fact is prominently manifest in this age of Kali because human society, not understanding the spiritual nature, is busy expanding in material activities. The men of the present day are almost unaware of their spiritual identity. They think that they are products of the elements of the material world and that everything will end with the annihilation of the body. Therefore, they conclude that as long as one has a material body consisting of material senses, one should enjoy the senses as much as possible. Since they are atheists, they do not care whether there is a next life. Such activities are described in this verse as avidya karma samgyanya. The material energy is separated from the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, although it is originally created by the Supreme Lord, he is not actually present within it. The Lord also confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, Madstani Sarvabhutani, everything is resting on me. This indicates that everything is resting on his own energy. For example, the planets are resting within outer space, which is the separated energy of Krishna. The Lord explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhumir apo nolovayu kam mano buddhir evacha hankara etiya me bina prakritir ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. The separated energy acts as if it were independent, but here it is said that although such energies are certainly factual, they are not independent but merely separated. The Prabhupada would use the word separated part and parcel to refer to the living entities. The separated energy can be understood from a practical example. I compose books by speaking into a dictaphone, and when the dictaphone is replayed, it appears that I am speaking personally, but actually I am not. I spoke personally, but then the dictaphone tape, which is separate from me, acts exactly like me. Similarly, the material energy originally emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it acts separately, although the energy is supplied by the Lord. This is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Mayad yakshena prakriti suyate sa chara charam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. Under the guidance of superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the material energy works as if independent, although it is not actually independent. In this verse from the Vishnu Purana, the total energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is classified in three divisions, namely the spiritual or internal potency of the Lord, the marginal potency or Kshetra-Gya, the living entity, and the material potency which is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and appears to act independently. When Srila Vyasadeva, by meditation and self-realization, saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also saw the separated energy of the Lord standing behind him. Apashyat Purusham Purnam Mayam Cha Tad Apashrayam. Vyasadeva also realized that it is this separated energy of the Lord, the material energy, that covers the knowledge of the living entities. Yayas samohito jiva atmanam tri gunatmakam. The separated material energy bewilders the living entities, jivas, and thus they work very hard under its influence, not knowing that they are not fulfilling their mission in life. Unfortunately, most of them think that they are the body and should therefore enjoy the material senses irresponsibly, since when death comes, everything will be finished. This atheistic philosophy, so this idea, unfortunately, most of them think that they are the body and should therefore enjoy the material senses irresponsibly, since when death comes, everything will be finished. So that's material thinking. And death, why worry? When you die, everything is finished anyway. So because they're atheists. This atheistic philosophy also flourished in India, where it was sometimes propagated by Charvak Muni, who said, Rinam kritva gritam bibet yajat jivet sukam jivet basmi bhutasya dehasya kuta punar agamano bhavet. His theory was that as long as one lives, one should eat as much ghee as possible. In India, ghee, clarified butter, is a basic ingredient for preparing many varieties of food. Since everyone wants to enjoy nice food, Charvak Muni advised that one eat as much ghee as possible. One may say, I have no money, how shall I purchase ghee? Charvak Muni, however, says, if you have no money, then beg, borrow, or steal, but in some way secure ghee and enjoy life. For one who further objects that he will be held accountable for such unauthorized activities as begging, borrowing, and stealing, Charvak Muni replies, you will not be held responsible. As soon as your body is burned to ashes after death, everything is finished. This is called ignorance. So his idea was, in order to, Charvak Muni thinking, in order to enjoy life, you have to eat nicely. And in order to eat nicely, you have to have ghee. So it is very important to get ghee. And if you have to beg, borrow, or even steal to get ghee, you should do it. But you should get ghee because then you can live nicely. That was the whole philosophy. This is called ignorance. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is also understood that one does not die with the annihilation of his body. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The annihilation of one body involves changing to another. Tata dehantara prapti. Therefore, to perform irresponsible activities in the material world is very dangerous. Without knowledge of the spirit soul and its transmigration, people are allured by the material energy to engage in many such activities as if one could become happy simply by dint of material knowledge without reference to spiritual existence. Therefore, the entire material world and its activities are referred to as avidya karma samganya. In order to dissipate the ignorance of the human beings who work under the material energy, which is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord comes down to revive their original nature or spiritual activities. Yada yada yadharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. As soon as they deviate from the original nature, the Lord comes to teach them. Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. My dear living entities, give up all material activities and simply surrender unto me for protection. It is a statement of Charvak Muni that one should beg, borrow, or steal money to purchase ghee and enjoy life. Rinam kritva gritam pibet. Thus, even the greatest atheist of India recommends that one eat ghee, not meat. No one could conceive of human beings eating meat like tigers and dogs. But men have become so degraded that they are just like animals and can no longer claim to have a human civilization. So Prabhupada is saying, well, at least Charvak Muni, he's emphasizing getting ghee because as far as the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, which are mundane activities, at least according to Charvak Muni, didn't include eating meat. People weren't thinking, they were thinking, when they thought about eating, they weren't thinking about eating animals or maybe, or cannibals eating even humans. Yeah. I mean, people are very degraded. You never know what they're capable of doing. And that material consciousness will continue. The Bhagavad Gita says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam Chajit yanti kalevaram tam tamme vaiti kuntiya sada tad bhava bhavita. Krishna says that there are two bodies. There's the gross material body, which consists of your senses, and the sense of taste and smell and all that. That's the gross level. But there's also a subtle body, which consists of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the Bhagavad Gita is saying, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, that your activities in this life, and this is a little dangerous, your activities in this life, if they're mundane activities, and then that is producing a particular consciousness. And there are many people, and they all have different consciousness. Somebody, this consciousness is just about making money. That's all he thinks about. And somebody's consciousness is to enjoy sex life. That's all they think about. But you don't need a human birth for these kind of things. So, but what's happening is that they're doing this on the gross level, but what's determining everything is their consciousness. And that is creating their next body. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam jajat yanti kalevaram. You'll get your next body according to your consciousness. And people don't know that. And they don't know where they're going. Yeah, so. Ena jiva tattva laya liki para tattva achana korila shreshta ishvara mahatva. The Mayavad philosophy is so degraded that it has taken the insignificant living entity to be the Lord, the supreme truth, thus covering the glory and supremacy of the absolute truth with monism. So here, Mahaprabhu is directly telling the Mayavadi philosophers, the Mayavadi sannyasis, how foolish you are, he says directly to them, to Prakashananda Saraswati and the Mayavadi sannyas. The Mayavad philosophy is so degraded that it has taken the insignificant living entities to be the Lord, the supreme truth, thus covering the glory and supremacy of the absolute truth with monism. So they say, you're God, but you have forgotten. Everyone's the Lord, but we have forgotten. So how is it How is it possible that God forgets? How is that possible? What kind of philosophy is that? The Mayavad philosophy is so degraded that it has taken the insignificant living entities to be the Lord, the supreme truth, thus covering the glory and supremacy of the absolute truth with monism. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur comments in this connection that in all Vedic scriptures, the Jiva-tattva, the truth... Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur comments in this connection that in all Vedic scriptures, the Jiva-tattva, the truth of the living entities, is mentioned to be one of the energies of the Lord. If one does not accept the living entity to be a minute, infinitesimal spark of the Supreme, but equates the Jiva-tattva with the Supreme Brahman, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, it must be understood that his entire philosophy is based on a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, Sripad Shankaracharya purposely claimed the Jiva-tattva, or living entities, to be equal to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his entire philosophy is based on a misunderstanding, and it misguides people to become atheists, whose mission in life is unfulfilled. The mission of human life is described in the Bhagavad Gita is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and become his devotee. But the Mayavad philosophy misleads one to defy the existence of the Supreme Personality of God and impose oneself as the Supreme Lord. Thus it has misguided hundreds of thousands of innocent men. In the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva is described that the Supreme Personality of God is potent, and that everything material or spiritual is but an emanation of his energy. The Lord, the Supreme Brahman, is the origin or source of everything, Janmadi Asya Yataha, and all other manifestations are emanations of different energies of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Vishnu Purana. Ekadesha stitasyagner jochna vishtarini yata parasya brahmana shaktis tatedam akilam jagat. Whatever we see in this world is simply an expansion of different energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is exactly like a fire that spreads illumination for a long distance, although it is situated in one place. And you can also see that with the sun. The sun is like a great fire in one sense, and it spreads its energy all over, although it is situated in one place. Whatever we see in this world is simply an expansion of different energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is like a fire that spreads illumination for a long distance, although it is situated in one place. This is a very vivid analogy. Similarly, it is stated just as everything in the material world exists in the sunshine, which is the energy of the sun, so everything exists on the basis of the spiritual material energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, although Krishna is situated in his own abode, Golokeva Nivasati Akilatma Bhuta, where he enjoys his transcendental pastimes with the cowherd boys and gopis, he is nevertheless present everywhere, even within the atoms of this universe. Andantarastam Paramanu Chayantarastam. This is the verdict of the Vedic literature. Unfortunately, the Mayavad philosophy, misguiding people by claiming the living entity to be the Lord, has created havoc throughout the entire world and led almost everyone to godlessness. By thus covering the glories of the Supreme Lord, the Mayavadi philosophers have done the greatest disservice to human society. It is to counteract these most abominable activities of the Mayavadi philosophers that Lord Chaitanya has introduced the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastieva, Nastieva, Nastieva Gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. People should simply engage in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for thus they will gradually come to understand that they are not the Supreme Personality of Godhead as they have been taught by the Mayavadi philosophers, but are eternal servants of the Lord. As soon as one engages himself in the transcendental service of the Lord, he becomes free. Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Therefore, the Hare Krishna movement or Krishna consciousness movement is the only light for the foolish living entities who think either that there is no God or that if God exists, he is formless and they themselves are also God. These misconceptions are very dangerous, and thus the only way to counteract them is to spread the Hare Krishna movement.
Go a little bit more, please.
Can you push more?
He will, because my shoulder I cannot move.
Okay. Okay, good. Vyasara sutrete kahe parinamavad Vyasabranta bolitara utaila bibad. In his Vedanta Sutra, Srila Vyasadeva has described that everything is but a transformation of the energy of the Lord. Shankaracharya, however, has misled the world by commenting that Vyasadeva was mistaken. Thus he has raised great opposition to theism throughout the entire world. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur explains, in the Vedanta Sutra of Srila Vyasadeva, it is definitely stated that all cosmic manifestations result from transformations of various energies of the Lord. Shankaracharya, however, not accepting the energy of the Lord, thinks that it is the Lord who is transformed. He has taken many clear statements from the Vedic literature and twisted them to try to prove that if the Lord or the Absolute Truth were transformed, his oneness would be disturbed. Thus he has accused Srila Vyasadeva of being mistaken. In developing his philosophy of monism or impersonalism, therefore he has established Vivartavad or the Mayavad theory of illusion. So this is a the Lord has many different energies, and he can always use those energies, and it's not transforming the Lord himself. He's not changed by using his energies. But the Mayavad philosophy is like saying, they say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. They say Brahman or spirit is real, but Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. But this world is false. And that's like saying the apple tree is real, but the apples are false. Yes. In the Brahma Sutra, 2nd chapter, the first aphorism is as follows. Taranantyatvam avam arambana shabdibhya tad ananyatvam arambana shabdari bhyaha tadana. Let me see. In the Brahma Sutra, 2nd chapter, the first aphorism is as follows. Tadananyatvam arambana shabdari bhya. Commenting on this sutra, in his Sharirak Bhashya, Shankaracharya has introduced the statement, Vachanam banam vikaro namadeyam, from the Chandogya Upanishad, to try to prove that acceptance of the transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord is faulty. He has tried to defy this transformation of energy in a misguided way, which will be explained later. Since his conception of God is impersonal, he does not believe that the entire cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energies of the Lord. For as soon as one accepts the various energies of the Absolute Truth, one must immediately accept the Absolute Truth to be personal and not impersonal. A person can create many things by the transformation of his energy. For example, a businessman transforms his energy by establishing many big factories or business organizations. Yet he remains a person, although his energy has been transformed into these many factories or business concerns. The Mayavadi philosophers do not understand this simple fact. Their tiny brains and poor fund of knowledge cannot afford them sufficient enlightenment to realize that when a man's energy is transformed, the man himself is not transformed, but remains the same person. So an electrician, he can use electricity for heating, or he can use it for cooling. He can utilize his energy in different ways. But as Prabhupada says, that in order for you to see that energy is being used in different ways, you have to admit that there's an intelligent person realizing or utilizing this energy. So they don't want to say that. They don't want to say there is transformations of energy, because then it implies personality. Somebody is transforming the energy. There's some intelligence behind it. So they just want to say that if you see the variety of the material world, it is illusion. It doesn't really exist. But that makes actually no sense. Not believing in the fact that the energy of the Absolute Truth is transformed, Shankaracharya has propounded his theory of illusion. This theory states that although the Absolute Truth is never transformed, we think that it is transformed, which is an illusion. Shankaracharya does not believe in the transformation of the energy of the Absolute Truth, for he claims that everything is one, and that the living entity is therefore also one with the Supreme. This is the Mayavad theory. Srila Vyasadeva has explained that the Absolute Truth is a person who has different potencies. Merely by his desire that there be creation, and by his glance, aikshata, he created this material world, asrijata. After creation, he remains the same person. He is not transformed into everything. One should accept that the Lord has inconceivable energies, and that it is by his order and will that varieties of manifestations have come into existence. In the Vedic literature, it is said, Satatvato Jnata Buddhir Vikaro Iti Udaritaha. This mantra indicates that from one fact another fact is generated. For example, a father is one fact, and a son generated from the father is a second fact. Thus both of them are truths, although one is generated from the other. This generation of a second independent truth from a first truth is called vikara, or transformation resulting in a byproduct. The Supreme Brahman is the Absolute Truth, and the energies that have emanated from him and are existing separately, such as the living entities and the cosmic manifestation, are also truths. This is an example of transformations, which is called vikara or parinama. To give another example of vikara, milk is the truth, but the same milk may be transformed into yogurt. Thus, yogurt is a transformation of milk, although the ingredients of yogurt and milk are the same. In the Chandogya Upanishad, there is the following mantra. Aitat atmyam idam sarvam. This mantra indicates without a doubt that the entire world is Brahman. The Absolute Truth has inconceivable energies, as confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. And the entire cosmic manifestation is evidence of these different energies of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is a fact, and therefore whatever is created by the Supreme Lord is also factual. Everything is true and complete, Purnam. But the original Purnam, the complete absolute truth, always remains the same. Purnam Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya. The absolute truth. So everything is true and complete, Purnam. But the original Purnam, the complete absolute truth, always remains the same. Purnat Purnam Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya. The absolute truth is so perfect that although innumerable energies emanate from him, manifest creations which appear to be different from him, he nevertheless maintains his personality. He never deteriorates under any circumstances. It is to be concluded that the entire cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord, not of the Supreme Lord or Absolute Truth himself, who always remains the same. So it is concluded the entire cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord. The energies are being used. It's a transformation of the energy of the Lord, not of the Supreme Lord or Absolute Truth himself, who always remains the same. So here it's being stated that the entire cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energy of the Lord, but that the Lord is not transformed in the process. The material world and living entities are transformations of the energy of the Lord, the Absolute Truth, or Brahman, who is the original source. In other words, the Absolute Truth, Brahman, is the original ingredient, and the other manifestations are transformations of this ingredient. This is also confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yato va imani bhutani jayante. This entire cosmic manifestation is made possible by the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, it is indicated that Brahman, the Absolute Truth, is the original cause, and that the living entities, jivas, and the cosmic manifestation are effects of this cause. The cause being a fact, the effects are also factual. They are not illusion. Shankaracharya has inconsistently tried to prove that it is an illusion to accept the material world and the jivas as byproducts of the Supreme Lord, because, in his conception, the existence of the material world and the jivas is different and separate from that of the absolute absolute truth. Okay? Shankaracharya has inconsistently tried to prove that it is an illusion to accept the material world and the jivas as byproducts of the Supreme Lord, because in his conception, the existence of the material world and the jivas is different and separate from that of the Absolute Truth. With this jugglery of understanding, Mayavadi philosophers have propagated the slogan, Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya, which declares that the Absolute Truth is fact, but the cosmic manifestation, and the living entities are simply illusion, or are simply illusions, and that all of them are in fact the Absolute Truth, and that the material world and living entities do not separately exist. It is, in other words, he's saying it is an illusion if you think you have an existence. It is therefore to be concluded that Shankaracharya, in order to present the Supreme Lord, the living entities and the material nature as indivisible and ignorant, tries to cover the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is therefore to be concluded that Shankaracharya, in order to present the Supreme Lord, the living entities, and the material nature as indivisible and ignorant, tries to cover the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He maintains that the material cosmic manifestation is mithya or false, but this is a great blunder. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a fact, how can his creation be false? Even in ordinary dealings, one cannot think the material cosmic manifestation to be false. Therefore, Vaishnava philosophers say that the cosmic creation is not false but temporary. It is separated from the Supreme Personality of God, but since it is wonderfully created by the energy of the Lord, to say that it is false is blasphemous. Non-devotees factually appreciate the wonderful creation of material nature, but they cannot appreciate the intelligence and energies, and cannot appreciate the intelligence and energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is behind this material creation. Sripad Ramanujacharya, however, refers to a sutra from the Aitareya Upanishad, Atma va idam agra asit, which points out that the Supreme Atma, the Absolute Truth, existed before the creation. One may argue, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely spiritual, how is it possible for him to be if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely spiritual, how is it possible for him to be the origin of creation and have within himself both material and spiritual energies? To answer this challenge, Sripad Ramanujacharya quotes a mantra from the Taittiriya Upanishad that states, Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat pranayanti abhisham vishanti. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhisham vishanti. This mantra confirms that the entire cosmic manifestation emanates from the Absolute Truth, rests upon the Absolute Truth, and after annihilation again re-enters the body of the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is originally spiritual, and when he enters the spiritual world or the body of the Supreme Lord, he still retains his identity as an individual soul. In this connection, Sripad Ramanujacharya gives the analogy that when a green bird enters a green tree, it does not become one with the tree. It retains its identity as a bird, although it appears to merge with the greenness of the tree. To give another analogy, an animal that enters a forest keeps its individuality, although apparently the beast merges with the forest. Similarly, in material existence, both the material energy and the living entities of the marginal potency maintain their individuality. Thus, although the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead interact within the cosmic manifestation, each keeps its separate individual existence. Thus, although the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead interact within the cosmic manifestation, each keeps its separate individual existence. Merging with the material or spiritual energies, therefore, does not involve loss of individuality. According to Sri Ramanujapad's theory of Vishtadvaita, although all the energies of the Lord are one, each keeps its individuality. Each keeps its individuality. According to Ramanuja's theory of Vishtadvaita. Although the energies of the Lord are one, each keeps its individuality. Vaishishtya. Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to mislead the readers of the Vedanta Sutra by misinterpreting the words Anandamoy, Mayobhyasat, and he has even tried to find fault with Vyasadeva. All the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra need not be examined here. However, since we intend to present the Vedanta Sutra, Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to mislead the readers of the Vedanta Sutra by misinterpreting the words Anandamayo Bhyasat, and he has even tried to find fault with Vyasadeva. All the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra need not be examined here. However, since we intend to present the Vedanta Sutra in a separate volume. Okay. So I'm going to stop at this point, and tomorrow we'll continue. Hariharaya Namah Krishna Jaravaya Namah Hariharaya Namah Krishna Jaravaya Namah Jaravaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah Jaravaya Madhavaya Gopa Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Girirari Gopinatha Madanaman Girirari Gopinatha Madanaman Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Janardan Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Janardan Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunan Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunan Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raghunan Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raghunan Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaite Vignana Shamishta Puran Jaite Vignana Shamishta Puran Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Dasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Dasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Sadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Sadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Janame Janame More Abhilas Janame Janame More Abhilas Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Anande Bolo Hari Raja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamadas Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamadas Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Jai Saparikara Shri Guru Garanka Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramasa Parabhajakacharya Statara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Nirmamacharya Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramasa Parabhajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramasa Parabhajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Kusham Ashram Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Tilak Neri Maharaj ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Navadip Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapur ki jai, Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai, Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Koladvip ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat ki jai, Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Seva Ashram ki jai, Ganga Devi ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Overnight, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo ki jai, Shri Purushottam Madam ki jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Jo ki jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya, Shri Nrsingadev ki jai, Bhakta Prabhara Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Shri Ekadasi Upavas ki jai, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj ki jai.